welcome home. Welcome to our space, the Hub for Decolonial Feminist Anthologies and in Africa. We are so happy to have you here to share in the joy of the completion of this incredible work. This book is wholesale outside, buy it at any time for 200 rand. I'm very excited to introduce this book to you, to share contributions from any of the incredible authors, and to celebrate the conclusion of this work. To give you an idea of events today, we're going to start with some words from Beretta, who will introduce the book as a co-editor at author on the book. And then we will begin to have some contributions from some other authors on the book. I'll come up and introduce each person as they come to speak. And then just before we end, we'll open the floor for any reflections, comments, thoughts, as we celebrate together. Then the other co-editor of the book, Simone, will come up and give her closing remarks. After that, we hope you'll stay and socialize with us. And as I mentioned, particularly outside for churches, which are in 80 Rand. So welcome to our space, welcome to the work that we do, and I hope that you enjoy tonight. Kajal forgot to introduce herself. So Kajal Kaur, she's doing a PhD in psychology in the department and in the House of Decolonial Feminist Psychology. So I'm Loretta Bonzaga, co-editor on the book, also co-director of the Hub for Decolonial Feminist Psychology and a professor in psychology. I want to start off by letting you know who we dedicated the book to. I'm really pleased to have Malini's brother with us today. So the book is dedicated to Malini Lohana, who was a clinical psychologist, women and children's rights advocate, community health worker, writer, feminist, storyteller, and artist, whose inspiring spirit lives on. I also want to read for you Malini's bio, and the book also has a chapter based on Malini's thesis, research thesis, question for clinical marketing, and it's very important to the Lohana family who allowed us to have a short news thought. And then he was a clinical psychologist, public health care worker, storyteller, writer, clinical feminist, and artist. She raised uncompromisingly against patriarchy, prejudice to all its forms, and ideology and systems that keep us left to under society and so on. She was passionate about the psychological development of children, and her early career includes years at Nanibali, an organization dedicated to youth and improving reading and the South African community. And the chapter based on Malini's work is the work that she did with Nanibali and working with younger children and the construction around gymnastics. And it's the only chapter in the book actually that reflects on younger children's knowledge around Christian virgin. It's a really special addition to the book. In the role that comes to define her as a clinical psychologist, what again is that she turned her expertise in preserving on the front lines of community plans in Johannesburg. She was appalled by the imbalances and apathy in the healthcare system that she was exposed to our constant basis, and she was working towards raising her weight and trying to make a change. Malini was a respected thought leader, and her journalistic, academic, and opinion piece work appeared in South African and international academic publications and in news outlets such as the Daily Maverick, the Nigerian Guardian, the Star, Bahara.com, was selected, the Sunday Times, and News24.com. And I was really grateful to have worked with Malini and internet her. Above all, she was a really beautiful person. So I want to sketch a little bit of the context of the book and what brought the book into fruition. And part of the context really is gender inequality, persistent gender inequality, and how that relates to forms of ongoing violence that we see. First, gender-based violence. We know, living in South Africa, all of us know the context of gender and sexual violence and how women, young people, girls are subjected to a range of different forms of gender and sexual violence. And this includes homophobic violence, as well as violence on the basis of gender identity and gender expression. So that's the first context for this book. The second is that over the years, we've begun to see, and since Fearsma School and Rosemar School, we've begun to see increasing conscientization of young people. How young people have challenged institutions to address legacies of apartheid, of colonization, and how they fight against racism, against exclusion, but also increasingly seeing young people's involvement in activism against gender-based violence and against sexual violence. So this book emerged from a project funded by the National Research Foundation that we ran over 6 years in the Department of Psychology from 2014 to 2019. And I want to read you some of the aims of that project, just to contextualize the book a bit further. The project was called The Gendered and Sexual Lives and Identifications of South African Youth, a participatory project. And it had some of the following aims: to explore young people's experiences of and identification with gender, with sexuality, and the intersections with other categories such as race, class, age, and place. To bring to the forefront young people's own knowledges and expertise that they have about their experiences regarding the creation of youth-centered knowledge. Thirdly, to explore how young people's experiences of and identifications with gender and sexuality might challenge traditional constructions that maintain heteronormativity and patriarchy. To examine how participants choose to represent their experiences of gender, sexuality, and its intersections through the use of photo books. And to empower research participants to develop a critical consciousness about the effects of patriarchal and heteronormative constructions of gender and sexuality on their lives and relationships. And so the project included a number of postgraduate researchers and colleagues, many of whom were in the room, and who were interested in doing work on youth and identity. And so the process of the book, I need to talk about the process of the book, because what this looks like is an edited book in which I appear as co-author on most of the chapters, which is very unusual for an edited book. The process of the book was really about mentoring first-time authors, many of authors who appear in the book are first-time authors. And that was also really like an important part of the work we were doing at the time, and that we continue to do in the Hub. It's about mentoring, working with collaboration and working with up-and-coming and emerging researchers and academics. And we see that as very important work. So it includes a range of chapters from the lived experiences of trans youth in Cape Town to experiences of LGBTIQ plus students at this institution. Two of the chapters focus on Lesotho specifically. Then I mentioned Malini's chapter on younger children's negotiations of gender, Black women's bodies and constructions of beauty, digital storytelling about violence. So a range of chapters that may be of interest to people working around young people and the intersections of gender, sexuality, and other identities. We also used a method called Photo Voice, which in the main engages young people creatively, engages participants creatively. It's a storytelling methodology, right? It's about using photography to tell particular kinds of stories. So a storytelling device
It also, this method, photo voice, also recognizes the power of stories for raising consciousness about particular issues. And we saw that quite a bit in the research. So some of the broad themes that I would argue cuts across the chapters in the book is that we find that a lot of the work on young people is written from the perspective of adult researchers, right? It's an adult-centered perspective. And young people are constructed in ways, especially when you talk about sexuality education or non-normative identity, there's the construction of this idea of risk, always at risk, and discourses around danger. And that is also an adult-centered kind of perspective. So what we try to do differently in this book is to foreground the agency of young people themselves, to foreground their voice and their own narratives. And that's really powerful. And that's the powerful part of, I think, of photo voice methodology, is that it allows people to express their own agency, to foreground their own voice, and to resist, right? So we see that, for instance, young people, in one of the chapters we wrote with talent in the room, young people not only have to navigate questions and explorations of their own identities in relation to race, class, sexuality, gender. Not only do they have to negotiate their material realities, right, which we talk about marginalized young people in particular, the difficulty there on their material realities, but then they also have to negotiate these discourses that stigmatize them in particular ways. You know, young people from Mitchell's Play, from Man in Black, from Kailicha, right? There's a particular representation about what that means. And so it was really important to foreground young people's voices and to show how they speak back. They speak back to these marginalizing discourses about themselves. And that was the power of the work for us. It shows that people, the young people who work with, understand representation of them. Even the younger children Malini worked with understood how they were constructed in particular ways in relation to gender, right? And there was a speaking back, right? A foregrounding of their own voices, which is really powerful. Some of the work we've done also, we saw that, and the powerful aspect of photo voice as a methodology is that it allows people to exhibit their story. So a lot of the work we had done included exhibitions where the young people we worked with were inviting teachers from the school, for instance, right? Teachers who had been discriminating against them in different ways. And so they themselves used their stories as ways to, they didn't need conscientization. They needed the adults in their lives to be conscientized about what it meant to be a young person who faced these multiple challenges. And so I think to end, another theme that I think was really powerful for us, and that I think is a thread throughout the book, is that working with young people, I think for us, it's a form of, we saw this as a form of hope, like of radical hope, of decolonial hope. The ways in which people took up, resisted, understood context, and spoke back, right? It was a form of radical decolonial hope, and I just want to read a quote from the book, if I can find the page. Oh, I have another quote that also just illustrates the foregrounding of people's perspectives through the method of photography. So AC, in chapter 6, says, these pictures, and this is about the photo voice exhibition, these pictures are not just ordinary pictures. They are what happen in my daily life. I see and make contact with violence, gangsterism, crime, religion, customs, all of it. Okay?
It's good.
And then to the point of radical decolonial hope, it's a quote, also in chapter 6, my favorite chapter, I shouldn't say that. Radical hope conveys the will and the movement towards alternative possibilities, wherein the charge is to resist and protest, and not to be dehumanized, not to be treated as second-class citizens, not being marginalized, and to secure a legacy and a place for our future generations. And then finally, it's about thinking about this hope, working with young people and thinking about the future that involves justice for all of us, right? And so Jill Bradbury, who's a psychologist who works at BITS, it's a quote from her in the last chapter of the book. She says, "Working with youth is an act of imagination, creating new storylines oriented towards a future that we hope will be more just and more equal than our current shared worlds or our own history." Thank you.
Thank you so much, Beretta. Your passion for the work is cohesive. Beautiful to hear. In all of that, I realized that I must have got some stage fright, because not only did I forget to introduce myself, I forgot to introduce Victor, and I forgot to introduce the hub. But I think that in the description of the book and the way the book came to be, there is so much about the hub that this work is an exemplar of. Floretta spoke about mentoring first-time authors into writing this book. That is such an incredible part of our decolonial community that we're creating in this space. There was also a lot of talk about whose voices were centered in the research. These are some of the core principles of the work that we do here. So as we sit in this space and we celebrate, and this space is a space in which we love to celebrate every day, no matter what we're doing. It is also a space in which we teach. And this is a classroom. And if you go into a lot of classrooms at UCT, they don't normally look like this. It's a space in which we work together on projects such as this, alone sometimes. And it's a space in which we invite you all to just be everything that you are. So, yeah, thank you, Floretta. We are now moving on to some contributions from other authors on the book. First up, we have Taryn Fleeger. Taryn is the founder of TBN Consultancy, which provides qualitative research, consulting services, training workshops, and academic advisory services. Her specific research and publication interests include feminist post-structural theories of gender, critical psychological and post-colonial theories of identity and subjectivity, and intersectional insight into men, masculinity, and intimate partner violence against women in Southern Africa. Good evening, everyone. It's really so good to be back. I see some familiar faces and some new ones. I guess it shows the power of the work that you do here and the continuity of the work as well. So thank you very much to the editors for placing us all in one little games, but also for your hard work in putting the volume together. I don't know which one, but we're speaking for the book. So I'm talking on behalf of Floretta and I, our chapter. Our chapter was a product of a partnership with Beacon Hill High, which is in Mitchell's Bay, also Floretta's high school. And it was a 3-year-long partnership between 2016 and 2018. Sorry. Now, you can imagine our 3 years' worth of stories and photo stories and images. There were just substantial amounts of data. There was absolutely no way that we could possibly fit that all within the scope of one chapter. So what I thought I would do now is to possibly tell you one particular untold story, one that didn't feature in a chapter at all, that really stuck with me. I wasn't part of the Photo Boys project for the entire time. I plugged in 2017. Loretta kindly invited me to be part of it at that point, and I remember that we were working closely with young men between the grades of 8 and 10 at Beacon Hill High, and we do our data collection on a Saturday morning. Wasn't always easy, but we did it. And this particular Saturday morning was dedicated to sharing images that they had collected about what their lives meant living in their particular community. And they would also write their photo stories. And one particular young man came to the meeting that morning and he shared what he brought with him. He brought a few bullet shells with him. And he found it on his way there that morning. And he wanted to take a picture of it while we were at the venue, at the school, because he felt that it accurately represented what his life meant. And we took a picture of this. But what was very interesting, actually, and it feeds off what Loretta was also saying earlier on, is that many of his pictures, in fact, all of them, were actually pictures of love and of community. He took a picture of his church, a place of worship where they shared love and were sharing community, where it was a place of safety. He took a picture of his friends. They looked like a boy band in the picture. It was fantastic. But it's social support for him. And he took a picture of his home because his brother was his role model. These were all messages, stories about love and happiness, but you know what it was about? It was hope. And it wasn't that he was ignoring the obvious issues around challenges, around traumas, around difficulties. Much like the other youth that were also part of this project, they all spoke back to the traumas that they experienced that were thrust upon them, that they were born into through no choice of their own, but that they choose hope. They choose hopeful stories. There's the saying that in the confrontation between the river and the rock, the river always wins. Sure, that's a message about perseverance and persistence. But what is that without hope? Choosing hope every day. The youth that were part of it came on these Saturday mornings, although sometimes it was difficult, for me to wake up. These youth came because they understood the power of representing their own lives. They understood the power of strengthening and growing their bonds in their communities. And particularly, they really loved their librarian, who would open without fail on Saturday mornings the library as a venue where we would hold these sessions. They had a fantastic relationship with Miss Diamonds. And it was a relationship where she was a maternal figure for many who wanted love and support, who seek that. I hope that these sentiments come through very strongly in our chapter, because that's what we were trying to write about. I think that many of these youth worked again, spoke back to these dominant stories that are written in public media discourse about at-risk Black communities and youth, which are entrenched in colonial discourse, entrenched in various kinds of discourse, but they spoke back to it. So at the end of the day, I don't know if I gave them any pearls of wisdom, but I do know that I walked away having learned one thing or two, and how to view life differently. So I just want to thank Loretta for allowing me to be part of the project for this whole period of time where it was life-changing. And I hope that you enjoy our trip. Thank you.
What?
Thank you so much, Karen. And I think we have to write decolonial hope as a principle of our work. It's beautiful. Our next speaker is Nkateko Ndlovu, who is passionate about mental health, especially those who are vulnerable in society, including women, children, and adolescents. Her long-term ambition is to contribute to reducing the mental health burden in low and middle income countries. Mika completed her BA honors in psychology and her MSc in neuroscience psychiatry, and is currently pursuing an MA, in clinical psychology. Min Katepo's current research focuses on improving access to interventions for children with autism and their families in low-resource environments in South Africa. She hopes to work in the public mental health sector and to continue to conduct clinical research to inform her practice and contribute to knowledge production.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone.
My name is Minkateko Ndlovu, or Minka, and I am now an intern clinical psychologist at Curtis Ear. And yeah, it's been a minute. It's been a couple of years since I've been here, but it's wonderful to be back. I was part of doing Chapter 8, Digital Storytelling about gender-based violence, and Taryn was my supervisor. And we worked together with Karabo Mabaso, who's not here today. And basically what the chapter or the study was about is that it was really centering around young black women's narratives of gender-based violence. And so it was about engaging in the ways in which young black women here at UCT shared stories about gender-based violence, particularly in higher education institutions. And I think where this came about is that there's been a lot of research around experiences of gender-based violence. And I think during that time, the 2017, 2018, 2019 time, there was a lot that was coming up from a lot of institutions about women who were experiencing sexual violence and gender-based violence. But then institutions were silent about it. And it really mattered to understand what women's narratives were around these things. And so we wanted to carry out this discourse and just understand what they think, what they feel, what their experiences were. And I think using digital storytelling was a beautiful way to illustrate that. And so we wanted to engage in what their meanings that they attached to gender-based violence, particularly at UCT. And we didn't really want to talk about personal experiences because that then also excludes those who may have not experienced but have witnessed or are still affected by it. And so we wanted to broaden the focus to then include the narratives even of those who didn't experience gender-based violence. And so we use digital storytelling, which is like a collaboration between different types of media that includes pictures and videos, and we created this beautiful digital story, which was a video that included pictures and videos. And at the time, it was during the time of Uyinene's, when she was missing and when she was murdered. And so it was very somber, it was very intense. And the backdrop of the video is also a poem that was put together by the women who were part of the study. So a lot of the pictures that are there have beautiful captions, but are very heavy as well. You realize that it's not just people who've experienced these things, but how their identities intersect, what it means to be a woman, what it means to be Black, what it means to be a particular class, a particular race, a particular gender, and how their experiences are silenced. And I think some of the narratives that came up were around how they've become more conscious around their intersecting identities, particularly in an institution like UCT, what that meant for them in their day-to-day lives, and how representations of gender-based violence may look different here in the institution versus where they come from in their homes. And we also saw what came up was also how the voices of cisgendered women and people in the LGBTI community, how their experiences are silenced, how their narratives, how their voices are silenced, and suppressed also by these hegemonic and patriarchal structures in the institution, and also around blame. And I think a heavy thing to hold was that a lot of the women felt that it was also their responsibility to protect themselves while they are the same people that are at risk. And it's like, why should that be their burden to carry? So yeah, it was, for me personally, doing the work was really, I think it was difficult. I think as a person who's also come from a background that has witnessed gender-based violence, it was a very triggering experience. But at the same time, I felt held and supported by the women who were in the study, by my supervisors, by Garabo, my research partner. And so a lot of it was around, you look at the stuff that they've said and all these discussions we're having in the focus groups, and you're like, I don't know what to do with this. And you just had to take it as reward as it was, and you put it out there. And so it was beautiful. It was exposing, but it was growing as well. And I think I've grown so much from doing the work, and then having to write the chapter again was taking me back. And I was like, I want to go back. We'll see autism later. But it was really beautiful, and I'm really happy to have been part of this, and I want to come back. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And thank you for sharing your experience of doing the work at Scope Up. Before we ask Timon to give us some closing remarks, I'd just like to provide everyone with the opportunity to share any reflections, comments, anything which, if anyone would like to.
Ellen.
Yeah, I said something more.
Of course.
I want Nkateko, thank you for your reminder. And you are always welcome back with arms wide open. But you reminded me, because I was remembering the digital story you produced in your research. And just I wanted to also pull people's attention to some of the images in the room, because a lot of these are based on photo voice projects that we've done. And then in 2019, we had an exhibition at the Center for African Studies on intersecting violences, and that's when we screened your short documentary. But that exhibition kind of highlighted the role of how these different forms of violence intersect in young people's lives, and it was a really powerful moment behind. Right, in the harm,
You do.
Here are the coming
The Pochi.
editions from the speakers.
Yeah.
To close us off, Simone Peters who is a co-editor and author on the book, will be sharing her closing remarks. Simone Peters is an African feminist psychologist, currently a postdoctoral fellow on the A.W. Lennon-funded First 1,000 Days of Life project. Her work focuses on the ways in which Black bodies make sense of their gendered and racial experiences and how they construct their community in post-apartheid South Africa. Her work makes use of photo voice methods alongside narrative and ethnographical methodologies. She is interested in Black masculinities, Black femininities, intersectionality, and decolonial and narrative methodologies. Dr. Peters has published various journal articles, book chapters, and co-written a monograph on photo voice methodology.
Yeah, I'm sorry guys, my daughter doesn't want me to flourish. She's really sick. Woo! But okay, I'm here. I told Soretta it's weird to be in this space again, because I started here as the opening of the hub as a PhD student, and I'm coming back to the hub as a co-editor of a book. So it's a big moment, thank you. It's a big moment for me to stand up here. But once again, thank you to everyone who's made the way out in this ice cold weather to be with us today. We expected 10 people, but clearly this is not 10 people. So people did not honor beef, but it's fine. We had enough food. We know how the program goes, but we truly do appreciate your presence here tonight. So this book, I know Floretta has her analogy of how this book started, but I'll tell you the truth of that. Your truth. My truth, okay. My truth. So this book project started 3 years ago. I just finished my PhD and Floretta was like, Simone, what are you doing with your life? Let's write a book. I was like, Floretta, so I've never written or co-edited a book. All I've ever done, a chapter in a book. That was a big one for me. And then a journal article. So the book was a daunting experience. I was like, yo, Floretta, okay. And I don't know anybody's been supervised from Floretta. If she asks you to do something, it's very hard to say no to Floretta. So I was like, and I'm like, when I looked at them, I'm happy that I have that trait. That when Floretta says, let's do it, I'm like, yes, let's do it. And then she's like, okay, Simone, a lot of these students are first-time authors. They haven't written before. You have some experience. I'm like, oh, Floretta, I really don't, but okay. Thanks for the belief in me. And I said, I will stand with the authors and I will help them in this journey. And obviously we had Floretta that also then helped us, because for all of us it was our first time doing a lot of these new things, and so this book is really one of my proudest moments. When I look at the book and I look at the content in the book, it's really a powerful tool. I know lots of people just write books, but this book is not just a book. For many of us, it's a tool of transformation. It's a tool for decolonial empowerment. Like Floretta said about the book, the aim is to tell different stories about the youth and young people. It's about rewriting our stories, about rewriting youth stories. I mean, lots of the participants come from marginalized communities. We have students from Manenberg, Richards Plain. These are communities that are known as stigmatized communities where only gangsters and people who are the scum of the earth come from, right? And we have young people saying, actually, we're taking back our stories. We are rewriting our stories, and we're retelling stories in the ways that we see fit. And I'm so proud that our book could be that avenue and could be that venue for students, young people to tell their stories the way they see fit. So a book like this doesn't just magically come by. We have a whole team of people that came together to put this book together. So part of my closing remarks was to say thank you to our team that was behind us. So first and foremost to Batunzi at the back. He was literally our fighter, our champion. He was like, this book will get published. I don't care how, I don't care when, but it will happen. And then he was like, let's keep pushing. And so thank you to you for being a pioneer, for seeing the potential in what Floretta, myself, and all the various authors were trying to do with this book. Thank you for the best read publishers, for their whole team. We had Sam nonstop, Shanice nonstop, that did not sleep to make sure that this take the edition. So thank you so much. We appreciate your belief in Floretta and in our project. Thank you to the Mahana family. Thank you for allowing us to publish your sister's work and for her legacy to continue. And then thank you to each and every one of our authors. I mean, without the authors, we would not have this book. They know I would be like, guys, so we got your views. I make this in by this time. Nobody said, oh, Simone, blah, blah. They were like, okay, Simone, we're going to push. Tadin is here today. Monique is here today. I now sent 1,002 emails out for we got the start yesterday. Yes, I was that person who sent 1 million emails. But now we have a published those times, so it was all worth it. But thank you for putting in the effort, for rushing with us. When the publisher said, we need it by this date, and I'm with you guys, we have 1 week, we need to push. So thank you so much. We appreciate that because you made me and Floretta's job just so much easier. And then thank you to each and every one of our participants. There's a lot of participants, but if you read the book, you'll see that they shared such vulnerability with us. They shared pictures of such intimate moments. So we thank each and every one of the participants. And then thank you to our family, our friends, our mentors, and our supervisors. Without your input, we wouldn't have been here as writers and as researchers. And then lastly, a big thank you to Floretta. I know Floretta, she ensures they started this hub because there was a lot of isolation. As students, we come into the psychology department isolation. We don't meet with each other. We don't know what the other one is doing. And so they started the hub as this community platform, a way for us not only to do decolonial and transformative work, but a way for us to come together as students so we felt less alone. And so I know when I started my PhD journey, prior to that, my postgrad was not the best journeys. I thank God for Floretta when I met her with this project in my honors year, and she's taken me under wing ever since. I started as undergrad, and now I'm coming here as a co-editor with you on the book, and that speaks to your level of pushing us and your level of mentoring us and your level of engaging us and not stopping with just, yeah, you always are like, let's push, and then you can write a journal, and then you can do a chapter. Let's do a book. The sky is the limit, And so, thank you for seeing the potential in each of us. Thank you for seeing, even when we don't see the potential. I mean, guys, when you said the book, I was like, yo, Floretta, I can't write. And yet, here we have a published book. And so, thank you for seeing the potential in each and every one of the students. And thank you for creating a space such as the hub for us to do such transformative work. And then thank you once again for all of you for coming and being in the space. Again, the book is $280. Buy it now while it's hot. Guys, the book goes for much more. So please, we need the sales, guys. Come on, man. No, actually, guys, it's an important tool, and it definitely will help you. So yeah, thank you so much for everyone for being here.
Thank you, everyone. Simone, the start of the book journey sounds a lot like how I became MC tonight. Thank you all for joining us. I hope you will stay to celebrate with us a little bit longer, enjoy your refreshments, and buy the book.